What's up, traders? In today's video, we are going to be performing a market forecast on EURUSD using smart money concepts. So stay tuned. So for reference, I am recording this video on the 29th of May, 2022. The time has just gone 8:23 a.m. local time. And as always, we're going to start off on the weekly chart, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because about 2 weeks ago, I did perform another market forecast on EURUSD where I dived in a little bit deeper on what the weekly was telling us. So what I want to do is I just want to focus more on what recent price action is. And as you can see, we've recently had this interaction with a weekly swing low level. Now, from a structure point of view, essentially how we've gotten to this particular interaction in here is we had a nice push to the downside that gave us a double bottom. Then we had a push to the upside, obviously, which broke structure in here. Then we had this internal lower low that was formed before price action pushed up, stopping just shy of our weekly swing high, giving us a double bottom, or a double top rather, and then pushing down lower. So basically, this is what our external structure point would look like. And what you'll see is in here, after price action formed this internal, essentially this internal low, what we had is, we had price action give us a valid demand zone in here. But as you can see, we did have a reaction from that demand zone. However, after the reaction from that demand zone, we had what we like to refer to as a flip zone. So essentially, we had, after the reaction from the supply zone, we had a supply zone that was formed, which was essentially strong enough to overpower this particular demand zone, right? Because you can see the price action came in, we had that reaction, price action pushed up initially before then rolling over to push down, right? So the reason I want to mark out this flip zone is because it's significant in the context of our external structure here on the weekly. We obviously have this push to the downside. So I would deem this as my more relevant break of structure to the downside of this weekly structure, which will then mean that the leg that I'm playing within, my swing leg that I'm playing within, would be this particular high and this particular low. Now, the reason I want to point this out is because if we then mark out this particular swing high and this low as the range that we're playing within, once we pull on our Fibonacci tool, we can then see that that particular flip zone that we've marked out in here sits within premium pricing. So this makes it a really high probability area for us to see potential continuations to the downside. Now, as I said, if you want to get a more in-depth look at what the weekly is doing, feel free to head over to the channel and look at the video that I did about 2 weeks ago, because essentially what we were saying in that video is there is potential for EURUSD to continue higher from this particular interaction with the weekly swing low. But if you zoom out, you'll see that we've got a demand zone that sits in here. So there is potential for price action once it pulls back towards our equilibrium and interacts with this flip zone. There is a possibility that we could get enough momentum to either push price past this weekly swing low level, or maybe fill some imbalance down here on the daily before continuing higher, right? Now, if you don't know what premium and discount pricing is, I did make a video last week discussing and essentially explaining the concept of premium pricing. So feel free to head over to that one. I'll make sure to leave an eye in the sky for that. All right. So from a weekly point of view, we've had a nice reaction from the weekly swing low. We are now seeing price action essentially pushing towards this particular weekly supply area, which is a strong flip zone, because we've seen price action essentially react from this demand, and then we had enough volume to push down lower. So if we now drop down to our daily chart, we can clearly see that our weekly is bullish at the moment. If we now drop down to our daily chart, and if we if we try and map out our external structure, so you can see that this is our weekly structure swing points in here. From a daily structure point of view now, we can basically see that we also have this particular high in here. We have a low, so price action pushed down to here. Then it pushed up, giving us this particular high, all right? So from this particular high, we then just had a nice push to the downside to form our weekly swing low in here, all right? So from a daily structure point of view, we've also had this particular break in structure here. So even though we have this large wick initially, in here initially, you can see the price action does push down and close below before giving us a little bit of a pullback. However, I will regard this entire move down from this high to this low as our overall swing, or as our overall daily swing. All right, so what that means is that now from a daily point of view, we are essentially playing within this particular range. Okay, now I don't want to confuse you too much, but essentially what you want to do is you want to make sure that you at least map out your weekly swing and then your daily swing, and then you just use your 4-hour structure to follow price action pretty closely, right? Or at least that's what my process looks like. Okay, so once we map out our swing high and our swing low of the daily swing, we can see that we are currently at the moment really close to interacting with our daily equilibrium. Okay, so that is positive. I would say that that is a good sign, because it means that essentially that weekly bullish reaction that we've seen off of the weekly swing low is essentially this bullish push to the upside on our daily. Now we could easily see, because we are interacting with our daily equilibrium now, we could see a correction of this particular daily push to the upside, just to give this particular bullish rally some relief before continuing higher to our weekly flip zone that we identified. All right, but now if we are to see that pullback, where could that pullback potentially come into? The very first zone that I want to map out for you would be this particular daily demand in here. Now, the reason I like this particular daily demand is for two reasons. Obviously, we've got the imbalance that sits in here after this particular pause in price, but also because this particular demand zone led to our daily change of character in here. Now, I did also make a video on daily change, or on change of character, understanding what change of character is and how to apply it to the markets. I will leave an eye in the sky for that one as well. But essentially what this daily change of character gave us, it gave us an indication, and it essentially signaled to us that this particular swing low was a confirmed swing low, both on a daily and on a weekly point, from a weekly and daily point of view. And it signaled that we've now seen a nice strong pullback from a weekly point of view. All right, because remember, your markets are fractal, or your price action is fractal. So your change of character will always first begin on your lower time frames. Okay, so we've seen this daily change of character, and I like this particular demand zone because it is the one that confirmed our daily change of character in here. All right, so because we are now interacting and we've just about tapped our equilibrium, we could see price action potentially pull back towards this particular daily demand before continuing higher to this weekly supply zone, which is a flip zone. Right now, if price action were to continue just a little bit deeper before pulling back towards here, what's another level that you could potentially aim for now from a daily point of view? Well, the one that stands out to me most would be this particular daily supply in here, which is essentially a wick zone, right? So wick zones I like to map out as well, because you do tend to see some reactions from those wick zones. So you can see that this particular wick zone, it now sits at our weekly. If I just zoom in out a little bit, you can see that this particular daily supply, that wick zone, sits at our weekly equilibrium. Okay, so we have two scenarios here that could potentially play out on the daily chart on EURUSD. We could either see price action because we've just tapped that equilibrium. We could see price action pull back towards demand before potentially pushing higher. Now, this particular supply could be just a reaction point to give us a bit of relief from this bullish rally before continuing higher, or this particular daily supply zone could be enough of a zone to see us continue lower, because we would have reached our weekly premium price, we would have reached our weekly equilibrium. Okay, it's important for you to remember that price action, when you're using the concept of premium and discount pricing, price action does not need to pull back really deep into your premium pricing before continuing an underlying bearish trend. All right, particularly with EURUSD, one of the characteristics of EURUSD is that it does not always pull back really deep. Okay, so those are two potential scenarios that could play out. Either we have from here a pullback towards here before a push up, or we could see price action from where it is now push a little bit deeper, and then either continue with the underlying bullish move from a weekly standpoint, or interact with this, pull back a little bit to push us a bit deeper into this weekly supply before then continuing that bearish push to the downside. All right, one thing that I also want to draw your attention to is within this overall weekly supply zone, which remember is a flip zone, we've also got this really nice daily supply area, which would essentially be our extreme level. Okay, so this would be the extreme level of this particular daily leg. Does that make sense? So that's also a nice area that we can look out for. So now that we have a very clear picture of what we could potentially see for the remainder of Q2 here on EURUSD, I want to leave you guys with some potential intraday opportunities that you could capitalize on when looking at this pair. So for that, I want to go down to my 4-hour chart. So we can see that we have our daily change of character in here. And if we just quickly mark out our swing structure from a 4-hour point of view, we can see that we can start from this particular daily swing high. We've had this push in here, so we had a break of structure to the downside, and this particular pullback on the 4-hour is where we got that daily flip zone. All right, price action push down. We did then have a period of consolidation before breaking down lower. This is obviously where we have our weekly daily swing low, and then after price action put in this particular swing low, we had really consistent bullishness to the upside. Okay, until we have essentially what we have in now, where we've seen a break of structure to the upside, and essentially now we're trying to see whether or not this is going to be a confirmed new low, or whether this was just a little bit of a sweep of liquidity. This is giving us an initial potential change of character to the downside. All right, now one thing I want to show you guys very quickly here on the 4-hour is you see that after this particular period of consolidation, we had price action push up and then essentially break down. Right, once we had this break of structure in here, this would have been our 4-hour swing that we're playing within. Okay, and if I just quickly utilize the bar replay tool here, you'll see that if this is our 4-hour swing that we're playing within, right, this obviously would have been bullish price action, right? This would have been essentially bullish order flow. However, this will only have been regarded as internal structure, right? Because at this point, after price action forms this high and price action forms this low, our overall 4-hour swing is still in place. So this would have just been regarded as internal structure, and we would have seen that this would have been a scenario where we could see price action push to the downside, right? Especially because we had this particular 4-hour wick supply in here. So you can see how price action pushed up, it just about stopped shy, and then it pulled back. So if you were live in the markets at around the 22nd of May, you would have regarded this as internal structure, and you would have been waiting for price to interact with this particular 4-hour extreme supply zone to potentially see if price action pushes down, right? Now, obviously, if we play price forward, what you'll see is that we had a really strong push to the upside. So a lot of volume came in, a really strong push to the upside. So what happened is that this particular 4-hour supply area failed. We had that daily change of character confirmed. And what that meant was, okay, what this particular candle meant is that we now had a 4-hour trend change. Does that make sense? I just wanted to explain that one just a little bit, because it is very easy to get lost in internal structure and lose sight of what your overall swing structure is saying. Okay, so from a 4-hour point of view, we are obviously bullish now. We can see the price action has just about interacted with that daily equilibrium. Is there any supply areas the price action has interacted with that could give us the inkling that we could see a pullback towards this particular level? Well, the first one that I want to map out would be this 4-hour supply in here, which we can see failed, obviously. Now, this was your first indication that, all right, cool, we definitely have some bullish order flow at the moment. And then the next one that we can map out, now remember, these 4-hour supply zones would be really strong areas on our 1-hour time frame, because you can see you have price action pushing down, and you have these little pullbacks, price action pushing down. So these ones would also be really strong structural points that we're currently mapping out. The next 4-hour supply that I want to map out would be this particular 4-hour supply in here. So from an intraday point of view, we can see that price action has mitigated, but essentially violated this 4-hour supply. The next area that we could potentially see price action pushing towards would be this particular 4-hour supply in and around 107,965, right? So because we've had a nice break of structure here, and we've essentially had a pullback. Remember, EURUSD does not pull back very deep before continuing a move, right? Because we've had that break of structure and that pullback, we could comfortably see price action pushing up towards this particular 4-hour before giving us a reaction, right? Now, this 4-hour price could just blow through it and then interact with this daily flip, right? But we could see a interaction with this particular level, and then price action could pull back a little bit before continuing higher, right? There's a couple of scenarios that you want to keep in mind. Remember, when you're trading the markets, you want to trade what is in front of you. If order flow is bullish, then you trade long. If order flow is bearish, then you trade short until it switches, okay? So we've got this nice 4-hour zone that I want to look at. I want to keep an eye on this from a reaction. And then if we just quickly drop down to the 1 hour, and if we see whether or not there's anything interesting that stands out to us, the very first level I think that would make a lot more sense would be this particular 1 hour wick demand zone in here, which sits at our previous swing low. So it sits at our previous 4-hour swing low. You can see that we have a lot of internal structure in here. Now, the reason I like this one, and the reason I think we could potentially see price action push towards here, is because at the moment above us we don't have anything of significance up here. Okay, all we have is we just have an Asian session high that sits in here. Now remember, Asian session highs, essentially your session highs, your session lows are liquidity. So we have session high liquidity in here, and we have session low liquidity in here. So one of two things could happen from an intraday point of view starting Monday, right? Depending on how the market opens, we could see price action take this particular liquidity up here on the 4-hour. So, excuse me, it could take this particular Asian session liquidity on its way to interacting with this 4-hour, or we could see price action take this liquidity, interact with this 1 hour, and then we can then have a much clearer picture of whether price action is going to be going bullish or whether price action is going to be going bearish, right? So EURUSD looking very interesting for the remainder of Q2. Definitely keep an eye on this particular daily flip zone, which essentially starts at around 108.528, and then also keep an eye on this daily demand zone which starts at around 106.014. All right. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure that you hit that like button. I appreciate all of the support that we've been getting on the channel thus far. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.